Shreyas Iyer still hasn't bent the peak of his cap. So when he was given his baggy cap, it's flat like this. And most players get it, and they just sort of subtly give it a little bit of a squeeze around before they put it on. Shreyas Iyer has not done that. He wants to keep his Indian cap with a flat brim, which is not exactly what other people do. But this is Shreyas Iyer, and he does things his way.
This is the last book. It's almost as good as a Minecraft video. Imagine that.
Shreyas Iyer obviously batted great today, but it's also worth sort of thinking about how hard it is for a young Indian batter to get anywhere. And not just a young Indian batter, but a young batter from Mumbai. Just think about the scenes from the Oval Maidan and all those kids out there with like impeccable front elbows, opening the face to leg spinners to guide the ball out on the offside. The level of skill needed to overcome all those players in Mumbai on its own is incredible. And then, of course, to push on and play for India. There are a lot of nations around the world, probably New Zealand included, that would have rushed a player like Iyer into their team just because they kind of have to. There isn't that kind of batting talent that stacks up in other countries, right? But India is a little bit different. And so he had to wait his turn, despite the fact that he was averaging over 50 in first-class cricket with a strike rate of 80 and completely tearing things up, probably unlike anyone since Ajinkya Rahane. He couldn't even get that close to the team. And it's not just Test cricket we're talking about as well. The limited overs teams are just as hard to get into. And think about this, if we'd had the World Cup in 2020 like we were supposed to, he probably plays in that team. But because of the virus, that doesn't happen. And then he's the captain of his IPL team as well, and he gets injured and he loses that. It feels like no matter how talented he is and how much he's done already in his short career, that getting to that final hurdle for Shreyas Iyer has just been very, very tough, over the top tough. Lots of little setbacks and things just haven't quite gone his way, which is why someone as talented as him at 26 hasn't been a regular in the Indian side. So much so that many people who've been backing him for a long time have been worried about him turning into, I'm going to say, Graham Hick. I've done a whole video about Rahane and Graham Hick and Shreyas Iyer at another time. But basically, the idea of Graham Hick was that he was so much better than everyone he played against at first-class level that it never actually translated at the Test level. True, if he got into bad habits, Hick actually made a lot of runs in England and in Australia and in Southern Africa when he played. Hick actually had a fairly wide array of experience before he came to Test level. He played first-class cricket in England, Zimbabwe, and Australia. He travelled around a little bit. That's not quite the case for Shreyas Iyer, but because he's been so talented, it feels like he's been held back a little bit. But there is another way to look at this. He's 26 years old. He's already captained an IPL team. He's travelled around with the white ball team. He's very experienced. And at 26, he should be heading towards his batting peak. A lot of guys with his talent are actually thrown in too young. They get into sometimes bad habits in Test cricket. They don't handle the pressure of Test cricket. They don't adapt to it because they're too young to grow with it. He's not going to have those sorts of problems. He's used to travelling. He's used to high pressure situations. And 26 is still young enough for him to have a very, very long career. And Iyer is also quite clearly not quite the finished article. And by that I mean he just hasn't had a chance to play overseas as much as you would like. But he has played 46 professional games outside of Asia. And the only time I could see that he really failed outside of Asia was an England A Tour in 2018, which was quite a while back then. Whether his game is perfect to translate to conditions outside of Asia, I'm not sure. I think in a perfect environment, maybe over the last 2 years when sadly India A haven't been playing that much, Shreyas Iyer probably would have played everywhere and they would have got him a lot more experience outside of Asia. Instead, hasn't even played first-class cricket in that time. We can't be sure of how all of this will translate, obviously, whether overseas or even in Asia. But we saw a glimpse of how some of his game translated in this particular innings. Like that first-class strike rate of 80, there's a chance if you have a high strike rate like that and you're obviously an above-average talent, that you might come in and play the exact same way at Test level. Having a strike rate of 80 at Test level is virtually impossible, I think. Quinton de Kock is almost there. Colin de Grandhomme is the only one off the top of my head, and there aren't that many players who've ever been able to do it. But what I liked about Iyer was even when he attacked, he picked bowlers to attack. At first he went after left-arm finger spinners. Perhaps that is something that he likes to go after, but it might also have been that he saw them as slightly weaker bowlers than the other guys or slightly less accurate. Then he waited for Kyle Jamieson to get tired. There's no point attacking Kyle Jamieson while he's in full flow. Wait for Kyle Jamieson to get tired and to stuff up a little bit and then attack. That's the perfect time to go after him. That's how he played that first innings. In the second innings, I thought it was even smarter. He actually just waited for the ball to get soft. He never fully attacked, perhaps because it just wasn't that situation. But he allowed Ashwin to score early on, and then off the back of that, he just kept chipping the ball around until it was soft and he didn't really look like going out. That's an excellent reading of what to do. And when Saha came out, perhaps because Saha was injured, he also manipulated the strike a little bit. And he didn't do it in a really overt way. He did it in a casual way, like, oh, yeah, another single at the end of the over. Whoops. That's really smart batting. He might have come in with a really high strike rate, but you could see that it's from smart batting rather than an abundance of hitting. Honestly, the whole thing reminded me of the first time I saw Joe Root play in Test cricket. I instantly said that I thought he was a 10-year player for England. And a lot of people went, whoa. But it just felt right. You know, something about it was right when Joe Root went out in the middle. Now, obviously, Joe Root was playing overseas and he was younger and there was a lot more pressure on him. But Iyer played on a much tougher wicket than Joe Root as well and had to do it in 2 innings in slightly different situations. In this game so far, there's only been 100. That was Iyer. There's only been, I think, 5 50s as well. And Iyer has one of those. That's doubling up. And the fact that he made runs twice is also really, really important, I think. And this wicket isn't great. It's not a bad cricket wicket. It's kind of a good cricket wicket, but it's not a great batting wicket. It's kind of shifty. It makes you think and it makes you change your game up a little bit. And I think Iyer has shown perfectly how to handle it on both occasions. Realistically, other than him, probably Will Young, Tom Latham, and probably Ashwin are the only other guys who've really understood this wicket. That's a really good sign for a player playing in his first test. And there's been other interesting obstacles like within the test itself. For instance, he had to sleep on a high score. Both times he's come into bat, India have been in a little bit of trouble. Once they were 100 down for 3, the other time they were 50 for 5. He's had to go up against Tim Southee, who he's starting to profile like one of the greatest seam bowlers that's ever played in Asia. And Kyle Jamieson, who, other than Akshar Patel, has the lowest bowling average of like anyone alive. Oh, and there's the fact that he hasn't played a first-class game since February of 2019. In fact, the game before that was in 2018, and he hasn't made 100 since, I think, late 2018. And that was in a game where Hardik Pandya was opening the bowling. You know, the step up from that to Kyle Jamieson and Tim Southee is massive. On paper, Iyer just profiles like a young Ajinkya Rahane, someone who was absolutely incredible in Mumbai. We don't know if he's going to translate to anything like Rahane. A lot of people, of course, only remember Rahane's last couple of years, which have been torturous, let's be honest, even if he has played some incredible innings within that time. What Rahane ended up doing is becoming a great touring batter for India, which was really important for them, and also became a specialist in facing the seaming ball. We have no idea how Iyer's skills will translate to the test level at the moment, other than he's very good in Kanpur. But he's been very good in Kanpur in first-class cricket as well. In fact, his third first-class game was actually at the same ground that he's done so well at here. And it was a bit of a weird story in that Mumbai had collapsed and Iyer had somehow turned up at the ground without any of his kit. So he had to use Shardul Thakur's kit. And they were about 50-odd for 6 when he was out in the middle. And he attacked bowls of the quality of Praveen Kumar. He ended up making 70-odd, and Mumbai won that game from a fairly unlikely position. And while these innings here weren't quite as dramatic, but certainly not the first innings one, there's a similar sort of pattern there. He had a bit of manic energy when he first came out to bat in this test, and then he pulled it back. Since then, he just looked completely in charge, even at times that India have not been that in charge of this game. Anything could happen when India were losing wickets in that second innings. Remember, he was at the crease when Agarwal and Jadeja were falling apart. More often than not in this test match, he's actually probably had the best of the batting conditions. From overs 1 to 30, the ball's been averaging about 36. From overs 30 to 80, it's been averaging 80. That's generally when he's been batting. But he was in earlier today. And also he's been batting in that period because he's been able to keep himself out there when a lot of other players haven't. But it's not just batting for conditions. Iyer seems to be batting comfortably within himself. And I think that's the most important thing, isn't it? It goes back to that cap and the straight brim. He's just playing as the player he is. That's a really important thing for a young test player because a lot is going to be thrown at him. If he goes through a run of 3 or 4 tests where he doesn't make any runs, which for any player in test cricket at the moment is going to happen when the bowlers are so much on top, the same people who said for ages he should be in the team, a lot of them will turn on him. That's the game. That's playing for India. That's the obstacle. But you get the feeling that no matter what happens, Iyer will do it, his way.